So, her name is Anna Karenina. I think Anna Karenina. Okay, I'm saying Anna Karenina. And I don't know what voice I'm gonna give her. Because I gave every single voice I possibly could. And she's kind of the main character because, as y'all can see. But is it Mary Sue of me to give her just my own voice? Like, it seems a little Mary Sue. Because she's such a Mary Sue. I don't want to look it up because spoilers, but she's kind of a Mary Sue, y'all. She's kind of a Mary Sue. Maybe some more flaws. There's this rest of the book to learn about all her flaws, but she's kind of a Mary Sue. So I don't know if it's like pick me to like give her my voice, but I've given everyone voices. So yeah. I'm just gonna give her my voice. I'm sorry. On to Anna Karenina, Part 1, Chapter 18. Vronsky followed the guard to the carriage and had to stop at the entrance of the compartment to let a lady pass out. The trained insight of a society man enabled Vronsky, with a single glance, to decide that she belonged to the best society. He apologized for being in her way and was about to enter the carriage, but felt compelled to have another look at her. Not because she was very beautiful, nor because of the elegance and modest grace of her whole figure, but because he saw in her sweet face, as she passed him, something specially tender and kind. When he looked round, she too turned her head. Her bright gray eyes, which seemed dark because of their black lashes, rested for a moment on his face, as if recognizing him, and then turned the passing crowd, evidently in search of someone. In that short look, Vronsky had time to notice the subdued animation that enlivened her face and seemed to flutter between her bright eyes and a scarcely perceptible smile which curved her rosy lips. It was as if an excess of vitality so filled her whole being, that it betrayed herself against her will, now in her smile, now in the light of her eyes. She deliberately tried to extinguish that light in her eyes, but it shone despite of her in her faint smile. Vronsky entered the carriage. His mother, a thin old woman with black eyes and curled hair, screwed up her eyes as she recognized her son, and her thin lips smiled slightly. She rose from the seat, and giving her handbag to her maid, held out her small dry hand to her son, then lifting his head, which had been bent to kiss her hand, kissed him on his face. "You had my telegram. You're well. That's a good thing." Oh wait, that's "You had my telegram. You're well. That's a good thing." Sorry, no, the mom fucking says that. "Have you had a good journey?" asked her son, sitting down on the seat beside her and involuntarily listening to a woman's voice outside the door. He knew it was the voice of the lady he had met as he had entered the carriage. "All the same, I don't agree with you," the lady was saying. "Yours are Petersburg views, madam." "Not at all, simply a woman's views." "Well, allow me to kiss your hand." "Au revoir, Ivan Petrovich, and please, if you... Oh, wait. That's... Am I gonna be pick me and just give her my voice? Maybe. There's not a lot of more main characters left. It's just Anna, Oblonsky, Levin, Kitty, Vronsky. That's like basically, there's like that, like, and like the prince and princess. "Au revoir, Ivan Petrovich, and please, if you see my brother, send him to me," said the lady, closing the door. That's so pick me! Closing the door and again entering the compartment. "Well, have you found your brother?" asked Vronsky's mother, addressing the lady. Vronsky understood that this was now Miss Karenina. "Your brother is here," he said, rising. "Excuse my not recognizing you before. Our acquaintance was so slight," he said with a bow, "that I am sure you do not remember me." "Oh, yes, I should have recognized you, especially as I believe your mother and I have talked of nothing but you all the way," said she, at last allowing the animation she had been trying to suppress to reveal itself in a smile. "But my brother is not here yet." "Go and call him, Alexis," said the old countess. Vronsky went out of the platform and shouted, "Oblonsky, here!" Mrs. Karenina did not wait for her brother to come in, but, on seeing him, descended from the carriage with a firm, light step, As soon as her brother came up to her, she threw her left arm round his neck with a movement that struck Vronsky by its firmness and grace, and drawing him to herself, gave him a big, vigorous kiss. Mwah! Vronsky did not take his eyes off her and kept smiling. He knew not why, but remembering that his mother was waiting for him, he went back into the carriage. "She is very charming, isn't she?" said the Countess, referring to Mrs. Karenina. "Her husband put her in the compartment with me, and I was very pleased. We talked all the way, and you are here. Vous filez parler amour. T'es mieux, mon cher, t'es mieux." What does this mean? You found, or something about the perfect love. Is this better? Is this the best? My love, is this the best? Mieux means better, or best. All the better, my love, all the better? I think it means like you found the perfect love, all the better, my love, all the better. I gotta go into this is gonna kill me. This is gonna kill me. What does this mean? Oh my god. We're on page 62. Okay. You are making a perfect love match. So much the better, my dear. So much the better. Okay. I was pretty close. Mrs. Karenina again entered the carriage to take leave of the Countess. "There, Countess, you have met your son and I my brother," she said, "and I have exhausted my stock of stories and should have had nothing more to tell you." "No, no," said the Countess, holding her hand. "I could travel around the world with you and not be dull. You are one of those charming women with whom it is nice to talk and nice to be silent. But please don't fret about your son. You can expect never to be parted." Mrs. Karenina stood very erect and her eyes were smiling. Anna Arkadievna Karenina has a son who I think is 8. Oh, wait. Anna Arkadievna Karenina has a son, I think, is 8 years old, explained the Countess. "And she has never before been separated from him, and so she is worried about having left him." "Yes, the Countess and I have talked all the time, I about my son and she about hers," said Mrs. Karenina, and a smile brightened her face, a kind smile on his account. "I expect you to be very wary of it," he said, quickly seizing in his flight the ball of coquetry she had thrown at him. But she evidently did not wish to continue the conversation in that tone, and turned to the old Countess. "Thank you very much. I hardly noticed how the time passed. Au revoir, Countess." "Goodbye, dear," answered the Countess. "Let me kiss your pretty face. I'm an old woman and say what I mean, and I tell you frankly that I've lost my heart to you." Conventional as the phrase was, Mrs. Karenina evidently believed it and was pleased. She blushed, stooped a little, and held out her face for the Countess to kiss, and she stood up again, and with the same smile hovering between her lips and eyes, held out her hand to Vronsky. He pressed the little hand, and the firm grip with which she shook his gave him unusual pleasure. She went out with that brisk tread which carried her rather full figure with such wonderful ease. "Very charming," said the old lady. Her son thought so too. He followed her with his eyes as long as he could see her graceful form, and his face retained its smile. Through the carriage window he saw her approach her brother and speak to him with animation about something that evidently had no connection with him, Vronsky, and that seemed to him provoking. "Well, Mum, are you quite well?" he said, turning towards his mother. "Quite everything is all right, Alexander. Alexander was very nice, and Varya looks very handsome. She is most interesting." And she began to tell about what interested her most, her grandson's christening, for which she had gone to Petersburg, and the special favor the Emperor had shown to her eldest son. "Here is Laventry at last," said Vronsky, looking out of the window. "We can go now if you like." The old major domo, who had accompanied the Countess on her journey, came in and announced that everything was ready, and the Countess rose to go. "Come, there is not much of a crowd now," said Vronsky. The maid took one bag and the little dog. The major domo and the porter took the other bags. Vronsky gave his arm to his mother, but just as they were coming out of the carriage, several people ran past them with frightened faces. The station master, with his peculiar colored cap, also ran past them. Evidently, something unusual had happened. The people were running back from the train. What? Where? Throw himself under! Run over!" shouted the passers-by. Oblonsky, with his sister on his arm, also turned back and, avoiding the crowd, stood with frightened faces behind the carriage. The ladies re-entered the carriage, while Vronsky and Oblonsky followed the crowd to find out about the accident. A watchman, either tipsy or too much muffled up because of the severe frost, had not heard a train that was being shunted and had been run over. Before Vronsky and Oblonsky returned, the ladies had heard this from the major domo. Oblonsky and Vronsky had both seen the mangled corpse. Oblonsky was evidently suffering. His face was puckered, and he seemed ready to cry. "Oh, how terrible, Lena! If you had seen it, oh, how terrible!" he kept saying. Vronsky remained silent. His handsome face was serious, but perfectly calm. "Oh, if you had seen it, Countess!" said Oblonsky. "And his wife was there. It was dreadful to see her. She threw herself on the body. They say he was so supportive of a very large family. It is terrible!" "Can nothing be done for her?" said Mrs. Karenina in an agitated whisper. Vronsky glanced at her at once and went out. "I will be back directly, Mama," he added, turning at the doorway. When he returned a few minutes later, Oblonsky was already talking to the Countess about the new opera singer, while she was impatiently glancing at the door in expectation of her son. "Now, let's go," said Vronsky as he came in. They went together, Vronsky walking in front with his mother, Mrs. Karenina following with her brother. At the exit, the station master overtook them and said to Vronsky, "You gave my assistant 200 rubles. Please be so kind as to say whom you intended it for." My bad, y'all. "For the widow," said Vronsky, shrugging his shoulders. "I don't understand what there is to ask." "You have given it!" exclaimed Oblonsky behind Vronsky, and pressing his sister's arm, he added, very kind, isn't he a fine fellow? My respects to you, Countess." And he remained behind with his sister, seeking her maid. When they came out, Vronsky's carriage had already started. The people coming from the station were still talking about the accident. "What a terrible death," said some gentleman as he passed them. "Cut in half, I hear." "On the contrary, I think it is a very easy death. Instantaneous," said another. "How is it that precautions are not taken?" said a third. Mrs. Karenina got into her brother's carriage, and Oblonsky noticed with surprise that her lips were trembling, and that it was with difficulty she kept back her tears. "What is the matter with you, Anna?" he asked when they had gone a few hundred yards. "It's a bad omen," she replied. "What nonsense!" said Oblonsky. "You're here, and that is the chief thing. You can't think of how my hopes rest on you." "And have you known Vronsky long?" she asked. "Yes. Do you know we hope he will marry Kitty?" "Yes," said Anna softly. But let us talk about your affairs," she added, shaking her head as if she wished physically to drive away something superfluous that hampered her. "Let us talk about your affairs. I have received your letter and have come." "Yes, all my hopes are fixed on you," said her brother. "Well, tell me all about it." And Oblonsky began his story. On reaching his house, he helped his sister out of the carriage, pressed her hand, and drove off into his office.